Good morning. Welcome to another session on environmental impact assessment. So today we'll be continuing with the discussion on the introduction. The course outcomes again, describing the objectives, capability and limitations of EIA, the learning outcomes, step-by-step procedure of the EIA process, screening and its importance, coming to specific outcomes, procedural steps involved in the EIA process, definition of screening and the importance of screening. So the environmental impact assessment cycle and the procedure. So EIA process is made of the following phases. Number one, screening. Number two, scoping and consideration of alternatives. Number three, baseline data collection. Number four, impact analysis. Number five, mitigation and environmental impact statement. Number six, public hearing. Number seven, environmental management plan. Number eight, decision making. And the last one, monitoring of the clearance condition. So I would like to briefly go through each of the phases before we go into the elaborate discussion on each of these. So screening, as you know, is actually a process where you try to filter out something. For example, uh, for example, mm, when they recruit somebody for a job, they try to screen people according to their qualifications, according to their merits, and based on so many other criteria and qualifications. So here also what happens is uh, whether a project has to be executed or not has to be evaluated in the beginning before the project is begun. So what they do in the screening process is they really look into whether the project can be executed or not from the environmental perspective, which is the major one, and then the economic perspective also, right? So that is what screening actually means. So when a project is being proposed, um, so they really have to decide whether to give a green signal for the project or not. So that is what happens in the screening process. And once screening is done and the project gets a green signal for execution, then comes the remaining things, right? Scoping. Scoping actually means is you might have heard of this word scope. So what is your project scope? So there are two things which we can say about the scope. One is in terms of the boundary, and boundary meaning, for example, hmm, one way of defining boundary is uh, in terms of the physical boundaries. For example, uh, this project is going to be executed in a particular location. So whether it is going to impact only that particular place. For example, assume a project is being uh, going to be implemented in Pollachi. So in that case, whether the project is going to affect only Pollachi or maybe even Coimbatore or maybe Tirupur or you know. So what is the physical boundary? What will be the impact of this project uh, in terms of the physical boundary? That is one way of looking at boundary. And another way of looking at boundary is, uh, this project is going to impact only water, or is going to impact water as well as air, or maybe it is going to impact the land as well, or maybe the wildlife is also going to get impacted, and so on and so forth. So that is another way of looking at boundary. So scoping is looking at the boundary of the project or the impact of the project in terms of physical boundary as well as the parameters that are going to get affected as I described just now. Coming to the third one, that is baseline data collection. So baseline data collection actually means is you are going to collect the basic data that is required to evaluate whether the project can be executed or not. So we need to collect basic data like the water quality data, the air quality data, and maybe the type of soil. And if it is going to be a construction project, we need to know the bearing capacity and the strength of the soil, and so on and so forth. So baseline data basically means is you're going to collect some uh, the basic data about some parameters like air, water, land, or maybe in terms of even wildlife. So you may have to look at what kind of living entities or living beings are staying in that particular location, and whether the project that is going to be executed is going to affect those animals, how much is going to get affected, and so on. So that is a baseline data collection. Next one is impact analysis. So in impact analysis, what we really do is we are going to see how much impact this particular will be having on the environment, right? Uh, and the next one is mitigation and environmental impact statement. So what mitigation actually means is mitigation is you are trying to remove some of the impacts. So it is very difficult to remove the impacts. So we can maybe look at reducing the impacts. So what are the measures that can be taken to reduce the environmental impacts that a particular project will be having on the environment? So you're trying to reduce the impacts. So what are the mitigation measures? Right. So each project will be having a specific impact, right? And also, it may be having a greater impact on a particular parameter. For example, an industry will have more impact. Maybe, for example, maybe a chemical industry will have more impact on water as well as the air. Why? Because they'll be releasing so many pollutants into the air, and also the possibility that they'll discharge all those effluents into the water bodies. So we'll have to look at what are the measures that can be taken to reduce the impacts in terms of air as well as water for that particular project. Why? Because it is going to affect the air and water very much. The next one is public hearing. Public hearing plays a major role in the EIA process, and as I discussed in the earlier session also, uh, the local people, are the most affected by a particular project. So, apart from the environment, people also get affected because of an infrastructure project. So, it is very important to hear from them as what they think. Are they aware of this particular project and its impacts, especially the impacts rather than the project itself? So, it is very important to know whether they are really giving a green signal for this project. Most probably, many projects will have a lot of impacts on the people as well. So we need to hear from them. So this public hearing is that particular aspect. The next one is environmental management plan. Now, having known that this project is going to cause a lot of impacts on the environment, so what kind of plan can be devised to protect the environment, right? So that is the environmental management plan, and this plan is not only during the execution phase of the project. This plan has to be devised, in the pre-construction phase, during the execution phase, and also post-execution phase. So the plan has to be devised in all different stages of the project. It is not only during the execution of the project, because impacts can occur prior to the execution, impacts can occur after the execution of the project, and so on. And the next step is the decision making process. So the decision making process, really what comes here is, at this stage what at this stage they have really evaluated the impacts of the project, and they really take a decision whether to go with the project or to drop it. So there's a very crucial point, right? So a decision is made whether the project can be executed or not. And the last stage is the monitoring of the clearance condition. Assuming that the project is given a uh, green flag and it is being executed, there will still be some impacts on the environment, right? We cannot say that a project will not have any impact on the environment, meaning it cannot be a null impact, which is very, very rare, right? It may have some impact either in water or on the land or air or living beings or animals, so on and so forth. So in that case, after the execution of the project, are they really monitoring the management plan that is being implemented to remove those impacts, right? So that has to be monitored time to time. That has to be monitored time to time. And this phase, the last phase, is dealing with this particular aspect where they really check whether the management plan is being properly executed, who is executing it, and whether the uh, after the execution of the management plan, whether the quality of the water, air, land, so on and so forth has improved or not, right? Thus we come to the end of this session. Thank you for your participation. Looking forward to meeting you in the next session.